we've been reactive about reproductive health, and we need to be proactive. I am a huge believer that caring for male fertility is a feminist issue. Women bear the entire burden of the journey. If somebody is going through IVF and it is a male factor issue, the female is the one treated. The average woman in her 30s knew how to walk down a Sephora aisle and identify this shade for this skin type, for this part of my routine, but we had no idea how to support our reproductive health. I wish I had someone just like you who was out there sharing their journey and showing me that, like, I'm not the only one feeling this way. And I'm not the only one going through this. And what you're feeling is actually normal. And you shouldn't be ashamed for having to go through, these parts of the journey.
Half of U.S. counties don't have an OBGYN. Most fertility brands answer that by going deeper into the clinic. Samantha Diamond did the opposite. She put fertility care on the shelf next to the mascara. After her own PCOS diagnosis and pregnancy loss, Samantha sold her beauty PR agency to Bird&Be. In just over 3 years since launch, she scaled it to an 8-figure subscription business and recently launched in over 300 Ulta Beauty stores. Samantha, welcome to Reclaim. I'm excited to dive in. Samantha, let's start with your origin and your lived experience. You walked away from having a successful PR agency to build Bird&Be, and you've also had a personal lived experience around PCOS. But let's start with what has driven you, what has motivated you to create Bird&Be and to what it is today, and also to explain what Bird&Be is to our listener.
Okay, well, this all started very early in my 20s when I actually felt like I had an unfair advantage. I was living with my now husband, who was then my boyfriend, and he was in his OBGYN residency, and he diagnosed me with PCOS. And because of that diagnosis, the trajectory of my entire reproductive health and fertility journey was changed. And I was able to actually start trying for a family earlier than I probably would have because I had access to this information. And then as we kind of navigated the journey, which did end up including pregnancy loss, I had kind of this personal navigation system in my own home. Even with that support, I struggled. And I think there's a big difference between knowing the facts and really understanding them. And so knowing that I would potentially struggle and knowing the statistics around miscarriage rates are very different from the experience and from the understanding. And so from there, I was able to access additional care. And again, I felt like I had this advantage where I have someone telling me in my home, I can help you with the medical and understanding what the clinic is telling you, which already in itself is just, it's a massive amount of knowledge and science that the average person just has no training in. So having that as a resource is wonderful. But then he said, there's this entire other world of naturopathic medicine that can support the lifestyle side of what you're going through. And so I went and I accessed the naturopathic doctors who now support us at Bird&Be in understanding, as a 30-something-year-old woman with PCOS, what are the things that I can be doing at home from a lifestyle perspective to help optimize my outcomes. And I was blown away because nobody had ever told me any of this before. Nobody had ever talked to me about diet, exercise, sleep, and supplements. And this just opened up a whole new can of worms of really like almost like a second full-time job of trying to navigate this entire other care pathway. And at the time I was running my PR and marketing agency in beauty. And by day I was helping women navigate a 12-step skincare routine with ease because it was packaged so beautiful. It was marketed so well. The average woman in her 30s knew how to walk down a Sephora aisle and identify, this shade for this skin type, for this part of my routine, but we had no idea how to support our reproductive health. And so it was at that point in time where I said, well, maybe, I can take these skills and my own lived experience, and how can I make this easier for people? How can I help other women arrive at the doctor's office never saying, I wish someone would have explained this to me, or I wish I would have known. And so that was the inception.
Yeah. I love how you broke that down between your conviction and what drove that with your lived experience, and then making it your mission to support other women. And I'm curious, in your experience, how many months of this other care path, if we're looking to conceive, or if you've had fertility struggles and we've had, losses, in your experience or in your view, how many months of preparation, to your point, having lifestyle impact and inputs, do we want to be thinking about as we're embarking or on this journey?
Well, there's two answers to that question. So in the immediate, it is 3 months. It takes 3 months to support or have an impact on egg quality or sperm quality, just because of the nature of how those cells develop. So you have your egg cell, which takes about 3 months to go through a process called follicular genesis and mature and then ovulate. And it's during that time that the egg is actually very vulnerable and it's very exposed to environmental stressors. And that's why we need antioxidants to help protect it. And it's the same thing with sperm. It's about 70 to 90 days, a spermatogenesis cycle. And men are a little bit luckier in this case. They get to turn over a new cohort of sperm every quarter. We say once a quarter. As women, we're born with all of the eggs we'll ever have. And so they have a fresh opportunity, we'll call it once a quarter. But that is kind of the immediate preparation. But we need to be thinking about our reproductive health very long term. So this is something that I am so passionate about advocating for when it comes to public health information, and how we actually need to start speaking to men and women at a very, very early age, because we've been reactive about reproductive health and we need to be proactive. So in the same way that the conversation now is all around women having to eat more protein and lift heavy weights because we are being proactive about supporting our bodies long term to be able to regulate our hormones and support our bones and mobility as we age. That is a proactive kind of exercise. We should be having the same conversation about fertility. So, as early as you possibly can, we need to be focusing on the lifestyle factors that support better reproductive health altogether.
Before we kind of go back into the founder's journey and like how you thought about which products to develop first, because now you have a whole line of products across different stages. I'm curious as to, from your perspective, I mean, in the last 3 to 4 years, conversations and awareness and actions taken even around egg freezing and fertility preparation, like there's been a flood of awareness compared to before. And I'm curious, in terms of having been in the space for the last 5 years, why do you think that conversation has received so much more attention, and yet we still need a lot more education? So like, where in the timeline are we at in terms of needs, and, especially with how passionate you feel about it?
Well, it's funny that you frame it like that, because that was our conviction from day one. When we first came together with my co-founder, Brianna, we had the foresight to see fertility health being talked about and addressed in the same way that we felt mental health had kind of evolved. So 5 years ago, we were telling our first kind of set of investors, think 5 years behind us and where mental health was. It was still stigmatized. Nobody really talked about their issues. It was very closeted. Fast forward, we have mental health awareness days. The top podcasts in the world are focused on mental health support different forms of therapies, different strategies people can use in their everyday to support mental health that is, we're talking about it at the dinner table. We're talking about it over cocktails. We're sharing our therapist's advice with our friends. That is the same trajectory that fertility is on. Fertility is an extraordinarily new space. Like the actual science and development around fertility and infertility therapies are, a few decades old. This is something, I think the oldest IVF baby is not even 50 yet. And so every year there is a rush of new information that is it's mind-blowing. We go to these conferences every year with the fertility doctors from around the world, and the research that is presented is significant. And so every year we're learning how important, like, whether it's a lifestyle perspective or new kind of medical procedures, these are so important to the development of the field. And this is all, for the most part, brand new. And so I think we as a company have been at the forefront of a lot of the development of this space. When we think about preconception health, so what we were just talking about, how to get ready, how to get your body ready, how to get your eggs and your sperm ready to conceive, this is a conversation that we have been a part of sharing over the past 5 years. And certainly when we think about male fertility, no one was talking about male fertility 5 years ago. And now we've grown a company where 30% of our revenue is coming from male fertility products. So
Wow.
this is, we were correct. Our foresight was correct. This is a very, very important space that the more folks and the more conversations like this people are having, like, we're going to continue to get there and move the needle.
Yeah. How did you go about deciding which products to focus on first? Because you're tackling a underserved and yet complicated category. You were one of the newer ones, and now there has been, with the growth of the market and awareness, there are now other brands and competitors in the space. So maybe kind of walk me through how you thought about the product line and really like how you were able to grow the company. I think based on our research, an 8-figure business in about 3-ish years since launch. So like when I found that stat, I was like, I've got to dive into how you grew it with relatively low investment.
Yep. So we consider ourselves to have 3 product lines. The first one is education and science. Everything we put out there into the world is written by, filmed by, or developed by doctors. And this product line was the first to launch. We started our Instagram account, our blog, and our TikTok well before we had any physical products, tangible products to actually sell to anyone to support their fertility and reproductive health. And why the education is so important is because we have this massive gap in public health education, where we're not hearing about, even at a basic level, think about high school sex ed. 17 states do not teach proper sex ed. They teach abstinence only education. And there's around 30 states that don't require medically accurate sex ed. So we're not even starting from a level playing field here. And then we've got potentially 15 years of white space where we've got no information that's coming from any reliable source proactively. And that's where, the internet has created a firestorm of misinformation. And so we needed to make sure that there was one trustworthy place where people can come for information. And what this product, this science product, does is it supports better access to care. So when you combine the education with our second product lineup, which is our at-home testing, and you are able to acknowledge, here are the signs and symptoms that I should be looking for well in advance to figure out, like, maybe I do need to see a doctor early. And then we have the at-home testing to complement that. Well, let's screen at home. Let's take a sperm test at home. Let's take an ovarian reserve screening test at home. And let's figure out, maybe I do have one of these warning signs. That's kind of the next step. I that that customer who flags at home at the beginning of their journey that they have an issue with their sperm motility, they are not waiting to see a doctor. And that's a huge issue. People are waiting too long to see a physician. And the longer you wait, it's not like you can get into a physician tomorrow. Depending on where you live, you might be waiting weeks or months. If you're up here in Canada, the wait list for a cycle where you might receive some funding could be a year and a half to 2 years. And if you're in a place where you live, kind of not in a urban center, you might be driving, 6 hours to your clinic. And if you're having to go through treatment, that drive, every day during an IVF cycle, it adds up and people put it off.
Yes.
It's not convenient to put it off. And
That's right.
so when we started the company, to go back to your question, what did we do first? Well, the education came first. The testing was supposed to come second because they paired together, but we launched during COVID and no one was making anything other than COVID tests. So we launched with Pillar 3, which are our supplements that range from preconception for male and female all the way through pregnancy and postpartum, looped back to the tests within that first year of launch
Yes.
once we
Yeah.
found a manufacturer that would make them for us.
Mm. And I love that you're addressing the different stages of the customer journey. And so I'm curious, do you find that equal folks are coming through testing and then buying the supplements? Or do you find that now with more options available, they've done some testing, have some awareness, and then the order is reversed? Or do you find that they primarily come in through that testing and having to get that?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the customer. Many of
Yeah.
them are coming to us at their fertility stage.
Yeah.
So we have some customers, as you said, who are already in the care of a doctor,
Okay.
and it's perhaps their doctor who's actually recommended our supplements. We have a pretty significant number of providers who are referring out to us, sampling us in their offices because we have such amazing data behind the products that we have created, and our formulas align with their protocols as well. The number of folks who are in a clinic who are coming to us for the supplements who've already received the testing. We have some folks, and the sperm test is probably our most popular test, who are coming to us at the very beginning stages of their journey and really wanting to learn more. And then we have really quite a large number of people who are coming to us at the trying to conceive at home or thinking about trying to conceive at home and are just kind of entering that period of time in their life, and they're starting actually preparing their body with the supplements, and then as needed they're kind of tracking their cycle with the ovulation tests as they go. The majority
That
of our
makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, they're coming through
Yeah.
at that fertility phase, although now we do have a number of customers probably close to our number 2 product these days. Sometimes it slips into number 3 back up to number 2 is our prenatal for pregnancy.
Interesting. Okay. I wish that I was aware of Bird&Be when I was trying to conceive for my second, because I went through quite an intense and long fertility journey. And this was about 6 years ago now. And so like this type of education and then the testing and then the supplements was actually what I needed. But at that time I didn't know. And so it just ended up being this very convoluted path that was frustrating and took a long time. So I can certainly relate to the need and just, having that support there. So I guess tell me about the growth. I'm very curious as to how you broke through. Was it from building organic community? Was it from paid acquisition? A combination of channels? Something that we see working with brands in this space is that there is such a high trust requirement. And if you're a new brand, you're also evolving a new category. I think that founders always think first is better or innovation is great, but then you also have to break through. And now you're breaking through on both the brand level and the solution level. So I guess tell me a little bit more about that. I was very curious to dive in on that front.
Yes. So this is where product market fit is extraordinarily meaningful because we
Yeah.
have had that from the beginning
Yeah.
because we've built our company around listening. And so before we launched a product, we needed to make sure that we weren't just servicing our own needs and what we thought was everybody else's problem. We needed to validate it. And so my co-founder, Brianna, this is her MO. Like she is the champion of listening. It's where she
Okay.
spends most of her time these days is in customer listening and hearing from them what they actually want. And so we interviewed through a combination of interviews and surveys, literally thousands of people to understand like what were the gaps in their own care pathways, what did they want, what needed to be fixed. And as part of those interviews, we also spoke to providers. What would make your life easier? What do you wish your patients knew? And so we built a product around both kind of the pathway into the care system as well as the care itself on the supplement side to help make sure we were actually able to make people's lives easier and achieve better outcomes. And could we actually support this, what we call like a change state with this physical product? And so we wanted to bring a product to market that people like really, once they try it, can't live without. And that was the first step of building. And certainly our product today looks very different than our MVP product. But in theory, it's the same thing where we've packaged together a formula that were designed by fertility doctors based on evidence. And we have since tested clinically to show that this is what exactly you need if you are in whatever stage of the journey you're in. And we've packaged it together so that it's extraordinarily convenient for somebody to take. It's also
Yes.
super convenient for a doctor to recommend this product instead of talking to their patient for 20 minutes about vitamins when they need those 20 minutes to be talking about the patient's protocol.
Right. Yes. And so did you initially start on the more B2B tapping into providers recommending or more direct to consumer? Or is
We
it pretty,
started
yeah.
out direct to consumer, and the
Okay.
providers happened organically. If you can believe,
Wow.
yes.
Wow. That's pretty amazing.
To this day, our provider channel is organic. And
Okay.
and
Wow.
it's because we built a product that adheres to the guidelines, has the clinical standards that they desire, and the product works so well for the
Wow.
fertility and reproductive health space. But we started direct to consumer and we started really organically. So we did
Oh,
our education, we did a lot of content, and we started to build our email lists. We started to build our social media presence because we were providing education and information that most people weren't used to having such great access to.
right.
We
Right.
put our doctors on TikTok and just did live Q&As. And when our doctors appear on TikTok, which they usually do once a week,
Wow.
we get thousands of people logging in and just furiously typing their questions because they're starved for information that comes from a real live fertility doctor.
That is so smart to have a doctor be on your TikTok channel once a week. Have you always had that campaign or program? Or I mean, that's a good move.
It's been great. We haven't always, I would say, had that consistency, but it was something that we did from the
Yeah.
beginning, and we're now trying to amp that up even more because we see the need. We're now
Yeah.
doing Zooms for our subscribers 1 to 2 times a month with our doctors where they can
Wow.
log on, they can ask questions, and sometimes we have very specific topics on our Zooms where we're doing anything from fertility 101 to nutrition and pregnancy, to fertility care for LGBTQ couples. And we'll have
Wow.
different doctors leading them, and our subscribers will be notified through email, and they can log on for free and they can listen to our doctors present for 20 minutes, and they are free to ask as many questions as they want.
Wow. How long when you first started to put out content did it take to start to see movement in sales? The content is needed, and one of the arguments against starting out so organically is that it does take time.
Yep.
I can only imagine in your case, because of the deep product market fit, once they are in, your LTV is high. So I'm curious around like the timeline and what that looked like, and just having the patience and the foresight to even be able to hold that model.
Yeah, I think another big piece that was almost combined with our own social media content was partnering with creators
Mm,
who were very much in, at the time, it was a very niche space. It was like
yeah.
TTC TikTok or TTC Instagram, where it was a trying to conceive like kind of micro community of people
Yeah.
who were sharing their fertility journeys. And this was something that was, I didn't have that when
Mm,
I was going through my own journey. There was nobody talking about these things publicly.
yeah.
And so we started very organically reaching out. And it was me in the DMs reaching
Yeah.
out to a lot of these creators who might have been, micro creators or micro creators at the time in this very niche space at the time, just really saying to them, like, you're doing what I wished I'd had. I wish I
Mm,
had someone just like you who was out there sharing their journey and showing me that, like, I'm not the only one feeling this way. And
mm,
I'm not the only one going through this. And what you're feeling is actually normal. And you shouldn't be ashamed for having to go through, these parts of the journey. And we developed real relationships with so many of these very brave creators who were really the first of their kind to publicize how difficult of a time they were having. And we gifted them products and they started talking about us. And so, in a combination of us having doctors put information out there into the world, with these creators who were sharing their own personal experience and using our products as a
yeah.
combination, after a few months, we really did see sales start to pick up.
Wow.
And when people are using products that work for them and they're getting pregnant, or they're in a fertility clinic and they're getting their semen analysis results back after being on a vitamin for a few months, and they're seeing the results improve so significantly, they're telling people about that.
Yes, that's right. That's right. I guess maybe before we go into the recent Ulta stores and placement, I'm curious, how has the acquisition, if it has changed in the last 2 to 3 years, with more players in the space, with more awareness, with more competitors? You see also paid ads, the cost of that increasing. I'm curious from like a bigger picture level, how has that impacted your business? But because you're so early on, maybe that's only strengthened your growth.
It has. The tailwinds are there. And so when other players come to market, firstly, it shines, a light on the space as a whole, and it creates a great halo effect for awareness. And our ads become more efficient. More people are aware. We're working in a space where we need to educate the consumer. Preconception is still not as well known as it's about to be in the next 5 years. And so more people talking about preconception and male fertility has a great halo. And perhaps people need to see ads less times before they start deep diving into the content and understanding what they need. In general, there's been more media coverage around fertility, and it's become more of a topic that I think from an awareness perspective has improved quite significantly. But certainly we're doing more things as we've grown that we couldn't afford to do in our first, few months. We weren't paying for ads at the very beginning. Now, obviously, we're spending money on more ads so we can share awareness with more people across all of the performance marketing channels. And then we're also able to do other things that we weren't able to do at the very beginning, like host events where we're showing up in spaces where both our customers are, our creators are, general public are going, and we're able to share with those events. We always include one of our doctors to offer education. And that wasn't something that we were doing in year one, certainly.
Yeah, I love that. I really appreciate just how grounded and methodical your approach to building the brand and building the company has been. It's like, it's very structured. It's very disciplined is probably the word that I'm looking for. Not trying to grow too fast, too quickly.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Well, what was the addition of going into retail and the Ulta launch? Like how did that kind of fit into the picture? And then I also was kind of hoping that could lead into like what's next because you've seen so much growth and the whole category has expanded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Ulta was not on our bingo card at the beginning of last year. And so it was definitely a bonus round for us. We were so excited by the opportunity to partner with Ulta because first of all, that is one of the biggest signals I think that there could be to show that reproductive health has a place in everyday wellness and everyday personal care. Reproductive health should be there, and male fertility is a part of that. We are the first male fertility brand. We're the only fertility brand in Ulta, but we are certainly the first male fertility brand in a retail location that is targeting female beauty and personal care.
Wow.
And
Wow.
that as a signal is telling. I am a huge believer that caring for male fertility is a feminist issue. We are caring for women if we are caring for men because women bear the entire burden of the journey. If somebody is going through IVF and it is a male factor issue, the female is the one treated. And
Yeah.
so if we are able to support better male health, we are supporting women. And
Yeah.
Ulta could see that. And so that opportunity just at a high level was thrilling. And now we've expanded to 1,000 doors. And so we are
1,000.
now
Wow.
in a
Wow.
1,000 Ulta doors, and people are coming into the stores and they are buying on Ulta.com. And we have exposed an entirely new demographic to proactive reproductive health and fertility care. And what's been even more exciting is the opportunity to actually have conversations with associates who are working there. So for some, this is their first interaction with any reproductive health education. And so
Wow.
they have an opportunity as associates to also educate their own communities and their customers. And so this in itself just it spreads awareness.
Wow. That is 1,000 locations. That's impressive.
It's
Yes.
exciting.
Very exciting. Are you expecting, or is it more of let's see, in terms of having more retail store placement and just having that be a key part of your channels, or still kind of TBD?
I think it's still TBD. It's always a consideration, and making sure that we have the right partners who help us use their megaphone and platform to support more awareness is always key for us. We don't want to be just a product on a shelf. We want to use every retail or IRL opportunity to really change the state of this entire industry. We need to make reproductive health proactive.
I would love to see more events, right? Like activations, like female founder events, dinners around this topic, because one, it's fun, and two, it is also productive. Yeah.
Totally. I'm with you.
Yes.
Invite me.
Yes.
Do it together.
Yes. 100%. I actually have these like themed founder dinners. And so now you're kind of getting my ideas rolling as well, but I love it. We have a lot of female founders who are listening. And so, what's been like, I would say like, what's driven your conviction, right? Being a founder, you've got the roller coaster ride. I think a venture backed company has its different sets of growth and opportunities and challenges. And so, yeah, I'm curious, like if you had to reflect on maybe the top two pivots or lessons, I think that'd be worthwhile to touch on.
Only two. Only two.
Only two. Yes, we got to boil it down.
I'll touch on a couple of things. I have been asked many times as a female founder and specifically as a female, how has the fundraising process gone and have you faced the same adversity as perhaps other female founded companies. What I will say is we have had almost no investors, male or female, who have left a meeting or a first intro meeting with us not understanding that this is a massive market. And there have been few and far between. I can count them on one hand, the people who don't understand this space, because infertility is so common. So honestly, almost every meeting we leave, somebody will tell us about their own fertility story, their friend's fertility story, their brother's fertility story. And it's the same thing we get into with even on the supplier side, our corrugated box manufacturer, our FedEx rep. They tell us their stories. They tell us really deep personal information all the time because it is so, so common. So I don't feel that as a quote unquote like female in the venture space that I have faced anybody who is looking at me or the company any differently. Honestly, I found a lot of support. As a female and a mother who is running a venture-backed high growth company now at scale, there are certainly challenges. Mothers are often the default parent. And so I have to, and you asked for challenges or pivots. Well, one of them is really being challenged to really understand, like, what is your limits and capacity, and how do I build myself and structure my day around knowing that I have a company to run and I have a responsibility to my team and to my investors and to my customers. And I have a deep and extraordinarily important responsibility to my kids and my family. And how do I do all of those things in one day? And my kids are at an age where, their after school life involves me driving them to and from arenas and basketball courts and play dates. Weekends are packed full, and you can't possibly get everything done in a day that you need to get done, and you need to preserve your own health, because without you and your own health, well, you're going to drop a lot more balls. And so really, really making sure that, and that has been a journey. That has been a journey, a challenge, a pivot, whatever you want to call it, from my hands in everything from day one to now really knowing where to step back and where team needs to come in to support on some of the execution, and making sure my time is spent on the tasks. We call them, and I'm sure you've heard this before, you've got the like $10 tasks, $100 tasks, and the $10,000 tasks. I got to spend the majority of my time on the $10,000 task. That doesn't mean I won't do a $10 task. I still go to FedEx, but the majority of my time needs to be spent on those $10,000 tasks. Every hour needs to be extraordinarily meaningful in my day because I've got all these other responsibilities on the side, and I got to preserve sanity.
So well said. And to your point, we have to also preserve our own, I know self-care gets overused, but we do really have to take care of ourselves and to be able to slot that in as well, which is, it's challenging.
It is, but it's, you know what? I think it is part of the structure of kind of how you build your company. Is you have to really make sure that the foundation is there, and that foundation is our own health, and it's non-negotiable. So, my daily workout is a non-negotiable. It is in my calendar as a block because it is as important. That is a $10,000 task.
Yes.
Because if I am unwell or I am unable to physically be resilient enough to grow this company at this pace with this much responsibility, then there is risk. There is risk.
Yes.
So it is foundational.
Love that. So clear. I think maybe before, so we call this podcast, or I named this podcast Reclaim, because in the thread of women's health and wellness, there is a lot that we are reclaiming and bringing to the surface. And so I was going to go into the question of what are you helping your customers reclaim? But then I had this thought around, you're a medical team and you're co-founder. And I thought it'd be worth, before going into the reclaim question, just touching on the product formulations, because
Okay.
there are a lot of products that are out there that has the science backed. Some are outsourced. Some have more of a direct development relationship with their medical team and advisors. I know I'm personally curious in terms of your formulation and the science behind it. Like what have you and your team put together that has truly been such a standout product line and is so effective, and what has really contributed to that?
Well, firstly, our products were formulated by the experts, the medical experts, whose sole job it is to get you pregnant. So these are not generalists. These are deep specialists who have years and years of additional training in their subspecialties of fertility, reproductive endocrinology. And so they look at the science from the perspective of what is the science saying about both males and females, sperm and egg, and what has worked in the scenarios to support better outcomes. And they're looking like really, really deeply and specifically. And it's also helpful that our chief medical advisor is not only a fertility doctor, but he's a clinical epidemiologist, which literally means he has learned how the study of studies, how to read studies in a way that is true and effective. And we have this paired with our fertility naturopaths who've spent their entire career in integrative medicine, meaning they have worked in IVF clinics, but on the naturopathic side, hand in hand with the endocrinologists. So they have a very, very different lens from a traditional naturopathic doctor. And so they start with the formula and what they wish their patients could be taking based on the research and their own clinical experience. And we're not talking about formulas that just check the boxes, like, yes, I have CoQ10 in there, and yes, I have vitamin E in there. It needs to have a therapeutic dose so that we can impact the clinical outcomes. And then we studied it. So we took the final product and we started with the male product. It is a lot less invasive to study sperm than it is to study egg. We like to say the men who participated in our clinical studies, it was a pleasurable experience for them to partake. And we partnered with a fertility clinic, and we've done 3 studies so far on the male product. First one was we partnered with the fertility clinic. They identified male factor infertility patients, and they took our supplement for 3 months, and then they did a repeat semen analysis in the same clinic. And we were actually able to show a statistically significant improvement in progressive sperm motility and total sperm motility, with a positive trend in sperm morphology, which is the shape. So the motility is the way it moves forward, arguably the most important parameter, because that's what it needs to get to the egg to get you pregnant. And so we have the stats, and other companies do not study their product in final form like this, where they're actually showing what, no, the so what. So what happened? So yes, people ingested the product, maybe their iron levels went up, or whatever they're testing, but what happened next? And that's where we're different.
Love that. Love that. Okay. So, final question, what are you helping your customers reclaim?
Well, a big piece of what we're helping them reclaim is their control. And so when someone is going through a fertility journey, one of the most common feelings is the feeling of out of control. Something is happening to me that I have no control over.
Yeah.
And one of the, I guess, triggers of feeling that way is a lack of understanding of what's happening to you and why it's happening. And so we start there with our education, where even if you're not our customer yet, and even if you're not in a fertility journey yet, we're arming you with the education that you need to take control. What are my signs and symptoms? What can I be doing at home to support my fertility? Here are the actionable steps that I need to do. And when you take action, that anxiety goes down.
Yeah.
So, number
Yeah.
one. Number two, we're arming you with
Mm.
at-home testing to take control of the
Yes.
process. So
Yes.
if you are, seeing a provider and they're like, you don't need testing yet, you can take the test at home and you
Mm.
can go back and say, I do need a referral. I do need extra support. There are so many amazing fertility clinics out there right now who don't even need referrals. And we're telling our customers, go right into the clinic, control that part of the journey. You go
Mm.
and take control of what comes next for you and learn. And then the simple act of being able to do something for your own health every single day by taking the vitamins, by making sure you're taking, again, actionable steps with changing your diet, supporting your exercise. Those are elements of how to take that control. You can control what you can control. Things are going to happen to you. We can only control our reactions to it. And so
Yes.
these are the things that every day we can control as what we can do for ourselves to optimize our health.
Love it. Love it. Control is a theme. I have to say, I wasn't exactly expecting that because there's so many angles when it comes to, reclaiming your power over your own fertility journey. But yeah, it's so clear when you break it down like that.
That too. You're
Yes.
you are reclaiming your power too, because we can't always control the outcomes,
Yeah.
but we can optimize everything that is in our power, we
Yeah.
can optimize. And sometimes you have things that, happen because they happen and it's not your fault.
Yeah.
But ultimately, what is in your hands is empowering.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Sam, I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, both from a personal understanding and also just also from like a business growth perspective. I loved having this type of connection. And I'm really excited to share this with our listeners and our community.